And we are live. Welcome back to the TVC podcast. This is your host, Jeffrey Dos Salas. Today, I am so excited to talk about what this thing about veteran stories is and how there's some overlooked stories that I think a lot of folks need to know about that is going on here. And today's guest is a very well accomplished individual who is a fellow Marine, also an Air Force veteran, so he is a one-upper. I haven't done another service yet. And he has a very accomplished career in industry that spans well over 20 years in management, leadership, business operations, and he is the current chief operating officer and business partner of the first Latino and veteran-owned film studio in the heart of Texas called Studio Village, Texas. So I want you guys to just join me here and give a warm welcome to Mr. Arnold Rodriguez. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It is a pleasure being here.
So, like we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of fast-moving things that are happening. I know you're a hard-charging fellow Marine, and you're also an Air Force veteran. But before we get into that in Studio Village, let's talk about your background. Where did you grow up? What are some of the things that are memorable that you remember? Would you please tell us about that?
Oh, certainly. It's something that I actually don't think about very often, but it's a very important part of my life. I was born and raised in the inner west side of San Antonio. Now, at that time, the west side of San Antonio was considered the outskirts of the city. So chickens and goats and a horse or two, they were not uncommon. Now, with desegregation, my parents thought that it was better for me to be located closer to the schools that I was to attend. So when I was about 15 years old, we moved from a neighborhood that was 99% Mexican American to one that was about 10% Mexican American. And there's some funny stories about that. For example, when I was in high school, my mother would prepare bean tacos for me for lunch. And I would take those for lunch. And the majority of the other kids in high school were white. But soon my bean tacos became their favorite, and they wanted to trade their bought cafeteria lunch for my bean tacos. So I had never pictured that my bean tacos would become something that would become so popular, but that was an indication that was a result of the desegregation that occurred. Um, Looking at my family's background, because it does relate to much of what happened to me later in life. My family's faith and commitment to the church was and is very strong. I have several uncles and cousins who are pastors. But in addition to that, my family has a strong belief in patriotic duty. I have members of my family who have served from World War II to Korea. As a matter of fact, my mother received my uncle's burial flag. So both the church and patriotic duty extremely strong as I was growing up, and it is something that never does leave you. My cousin and I, we joined the Marine Corps in October of 1967 because we felt it was our family's patriotic duty. And I had a rapid rise in rank while in the Marine Corps, achieving corporal at the age of 18 and sergeant at the age of 19. I served with a Marine VMO unit, originally in Okinawa. Then we were moved to Da Nang and then to Fubai. And I was there from January 1968 to May of 1969. The final 3 months of being overseas were actually spent in a naval hospital in Japan. And as a matter of fact, my parents received notification that I was MIA. So my parents didn't want to believe and accept that I was an MIA, so they got help from the American Red Cross. And they finally found me in the hospital in Japan, so they were very relieved. Following my 3 years active service and 4 years reserve with the Marine Corps, I joined the Air Force Reserve for another 4 years. But to make a very long story short, and this is something that also very much affected me for the rest of my life, upon leaving the Naval Hospital and returning home, I had a strong desire to put the entire experience out of my mind. But the return home added extra trauma. When we landed at the military base in the United States and were taken by bus to the airport to catch flights home, our bus was greeted with rocks, with eggs, and many hateful words. At the airport, I quickly changed to civilian clothing, and for the next several years, I covered up the fact that I was a veteran. Being a veteran back then was not appreciated or respected. So I became a closet veteran. Many of my veteran friends didn't do well. Some committed suicide. Some turned their anger to violence. Others turned to drugs. There wasn't much help. And other than the VA psychiatrist, that was who routinely you would be referred to. But they prescribed pills and more pills, and they fought us getting attention to our problems, including those related to Agent Orange. All of that history from childhood up through the return from Vietnam left a very strong impression. But I had my VA benefits, which I was not going to let go by. I used my VA benefits to graduate from the University of Texas at Austin. And a few years later, from Trinity Law School, where I completed my master's in labor and employment law. Then I became a certified dispute mediator, an employment law specialist, and a project manager. I had key roles at all levels of government, including municipal, county, state, and federal government. I had leadership roles in corporate America with companies such as T-Mobile, Ticketmaster, and USA Network. I negotiated with all the major unions, including the AFL-CIO, Teamsters, AFSCME, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the Communication Workers of America, and several police and firefighter unions. I became an adjunct instructor with the University of Arizona and South Texas College. I also became a consultant to private and public sector organizations in Arizona and across Texas. I started a nonprofit for homeless children, which was featured on NBC News. And then I subsequently worked with the American Bar Association to grow a major nonprofit that assisted migrant children without parents. For the past 30 years, I have worked with minority and women entrepreneurs and small business owners to develop their business dreams into reality. As you said, Jeffrey, I'm currently serving as the Chief Operations Officer for Studio Village. And Studio Village is a film, soundstage, and production services company committed to serving the film and television industry and contributing to the growth of our community. Now, what's very important about Studio Village, and you mentioned it, Jeffrey, is that its goal is to develop the first Latino and veteran managed major film studio in the United States. 2025, for it to be the first such major studio, it's amazing, but it certainly does indicate that the time is greatly overdue. And what we want to do is facilitate the development of positive narratives about Latinos, Latinas, and veterans. And this is something that I'll say more about in a little while. But looking back at my experiences in the Marine Corps and what it took for me to survive, that I think holds lessons which I now realize relate to today's veterans. One of the biggest lessons is to know that you're not alone. And Jeffrey, you help a great deal on this by what you are doing. Veterans have each other, and there are people who care, and there is Christ who is always there to help, but allows a person to take their personal path to him. This brings me back to the vision for Studio Village and why I was so attracted to John's vision, John Montemayor, the Studio Village CEO that you previously had in the program. John's vision of a major film studio is that it's not just a building, it's a way to make people's dreams come true and develop the local community, connect with others nationally and internationally, develop awareness of important community issues, and spread positive, inspiring messages. Regarding the messaging, what are the messages that should be provided to others? Well, one important message is that in a world that's filled with distractions and ways of self-destruction, there is a path towards self-fulfillment. And this path, however, involves getting rid of ways in which others have defined who you are and learning that you have or are a living miracle and understanding the potential that you have because you were created in God's image. To begin with, you need a passion because passion provides the courage to overcome obstacles and it compels us to live fully and authentically. When you feel passionate about something, and it can be a cause or it can be a person, you experience an inner fire that motivates you to pursue goals with relentless enthusiasm, like a charging Marine, even in the face of setbacks. To provide this life-giving message to others, we see filmmaking as one of the best means to reach the most people. Cinema, at its very essence, is an art form driven by passion. Looking at Studio Village, as I said, it's not just film sound stages. It is an opportunity to change the negative and false narratives of Latinos and veterans that are told to the world. Through Studio Village, which would be the first Latino-owned and veteran-managed major film studio in the United States, the narrative about Latinos can be made an authentic and positive one, and a positive message of hope can be provided to veterans, with the most important message being that there is a path made of hope, faith, and constructive action. This is something I wish I had when I returned from Vietnam. It would have saved people's lives. It would have made people's lives into being more productive. In short, Studio Village will be the base for the production of uplifting and inspirational narratives for everyone. Now, the question comes up, what is it that needs to be done to realize the vision of the first major Latino-owned and veteran-managed film studio? Well, basically it comes down to support. We need people to show their support, whether it be by way of providing supporting comments, public endorsements, mentioning Studio Village in the public, to the public, and the importance of it, and certainly through investment, which, by the way, Studio Village is a very impressive investment opportunity. To summarize, Jeffrey, it takes a village, the support of the Latino veteran community, and from anyone who cares about truthful narratives and understanding. Now, it is not just the responsibility of a few, such as John or me, or even just yours, Jeffrey. It is interconnecting everyone in the community so that they share the responsibility to develop and lift up everyone in the community.
Powerful words, and I don't know how to follow that because you hit the nail on the head here, Arnold. You mentioned a couple things, but first of all, I want to give you praise and tell you thank you for your service, brother. Even though those who didn't recognize or acknowledge it, because Vietnam is that overlooked war that no one wants to talk about. I want to thank you, Arnold, for your service and everything that you did, because not everybody is willing to raise the right hand and take an oath and sign a blank check to serve America. You are the true embodiment as an American. You're patriotic, you're faith-based, you're in Texas, and I'm Texan is growing on me. I will have to say, being from California, and that's that's a lot. But I am very impressed of your corporate background. I'm very impressed of your advocacy for those who can't advocate for themselves, such as legal and migrant children. Your master's degree, like everything that you have, you're a well accomplished individual. And the fact that you're now taking this on as a business partner and chief operating officer of telling the story, the true story of who we are as a people, that not only provides $4 trillion for this economy, but we have 60 plus Medal of Honor recipients from the Latino community. And let me tell you, most of the Medal of Honor recipients, a quarter of them have immigrant backgrounds, right? And so yes, I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you for that, because you went through a period, reminds me of Major James Capers and another Vietnam veteran, Mr. Lenwood Long, as well, where they had to go through their own desegregation processes. One of them told me that he was still having to go back to the bus, even though he served in Vietnam. So yeah, you had to go through something similar through that desegregation process. And let me tell you, not everybody makes sergeant in 2 years or corporal in 18. It took me a couple years to make corporal. And then when I went to the reserves, the Marine Corps decided to promote me as a sergeant. I was like, oh, great. So I got active duty, and then they promoted me as a sergeant. I'm like, okay, great, right? So my final EAS, was sergeant, right? Sergeant Rosales. But it's so impressive, the things that you're doing from a leadership perspective. Can you share maybe a couple stories of your like what is causing you to want to change this narrative? Was there something personal that happened besides the Vietnam, or could be in Vietnam, or it could be what you saw in employment law through a migrant, or something maybe that your family may have experienced it? Because the reason why I got involved in launching this podcast is because I'm tired of seeing veterans on the streets. I'm tired of seeing veterans take their lives. I'm tired of these narratives, these fake narratives that are being told by the status quo or legacy media or the corporate media, because a lot of folks don't know, as we've talked about, the real Rambo is, which is Roy Benavides, a fellow Vietnam veteran, the actual Rambo, the one that took a knife to a gunfight, has over 40 wounds, was wrapped up in a body bag, and then he spit in Doc's face and told him that I was still alive. Then he fought for disability benefits, even when the VA tried to take away his benefits, telling him that he was pretty able and so he can work. And so, what is something that that has stood out to you, Arnold, where that you want to share here, where it's getting you, because you're on the path, brother, and everybody's on a path that God has designed for him. So I'm curious what got you there.
Yes. Well, that's a very good question, Jeffrey, and I think it is very important for each individual to have that personal insight to understand, why am I here now and why am I going forward? As a child, I mentioned that my family was very much devoted to the church, surrounded by family members who were pastors, very patriotic uncles and older cousins who came back. Some didn't come back from either World War II or Korea. But, I used to shine shoes in downtown San Antonio. And myself and my cousins, and we would often shine the shoes of the servicemen that were stationed there at Lackland Air Force Base. They would get very hot, and we would get thirsty. But in those days, there were the days when there were water fountains, or restrooms that were for whites only. I could have stood back and said, that makes me angry. And I want to be able to get back at people for treating me in a way that I was less than human. I was working, trying to make money, help the family as a child, 10, 11 years old. And I couldn't even drink from a water fountain because I was the wrong color of skin. that came inside of me. But nonetheless, my family had such a strong belief in God and in this country that they didn't say, look, this is being done to you. It is bad. No, they said, look, get an education, serve your country, move forward, make things better for yourself and others. That has stuck in my mind. Yes, I went through Vietnam. It was, again, a very horrifying experience. When I got home, yes, there was disrespect. I could have, in that type of situation, very similar to when I was a child and I couldn't drink from a public water fountain, I could have said, hey, this isn't worth it. I'm angry. I'm going to fight back. No, what I did is I took my VA benefits and I got an education. And then I started to show I didn't have to hide. I didn't have anything to be embarrassed about. I didn't have anything that was less than anyone else around me. That really drove me. To this day, that still drives me. But I realize that it is so important to people to realize that type of experience who either haven't faced it yet or are facing it, and to be able to provide them with an inspiration of how they themselves can overcome what life is. Life is not fair, but life does give you opportunity, and you follow the right path, and you believe in yourself, and you have faith. You can overcome. Now we're looking at the first Latino-owned and veteran-managed film studio. This reminds me very much of when I was a kid shining shoes. It reminds me very much of when I was coming back and rocks were being thrown in our bus. I got up from each one of those. Now, this is another big step.
Amen, brother. Amen
yes.
to that. Real quick, I just want to add a little bit to that because I want folks to understand is Arnold had a foundation that was built like a rock. If your house is built on a rock, it will withstand anything. And the fact that their belief and faith in God is what helped them. Your story reminds me of my father. My late father passed away in 2016. He had 12 kids. His first wife passed away because they didn't have medical care in Mexico. He had 2 stillborn kids. He was beaten by his dad, and he was treated really bad by his stepmom. And so he ended up becoming a bracero, which powered war production for America in World War II. And that's something that is overlooked here. And he came to the United States. He went all over the country, from the Midwest. He even picked cotton, and he went and ended up in the Central Valley, picking strawberries, picking grapes. All of this was the precursor to Cesar Chavez, which a lot of people know is also a Navy veteran. But I say all that, Arnold, because my father faced that same type of exclusion, even though he was powering America, and not only powering America, but he was contributing, or at least his predecessors contributed, because I don't think he was in World War II at that time as a bracero. But because of the braceros, they powered America to victory, because you need a strong industrial base. And that is what wins the wars economically, right? So that's why there's this whole big fight with China. Right now we're fighting over who has a mightier industry, because that is what solves it. But he faced discrimination. He was chased after. He had to always go hide in the restaurants. And after he had lost his wife, he met my mom in Los Angeles, and he started a new family. But he brought his kids with him, his kids, my half siblings. And there were a couple incidents. We always used to say, Dad, you have like 9 lives, because there was one time he was working in Mexico City on the railroad. He fell, was about 100 feet, survived that. His truck flipped in LA, in that big famous bridge in LA, survived that. And he survived a lot of things, from from heart disease and all these other things. And I'm like, wow, like how does this man like still alive today? But it was his faith, Arnold. He was a part of the church. He went there every Sunday at 9 o'clock. He got us all up and to get there, to the point where I had to start going MIA and hanging out with my friends because I didn't want to be a part of his discipline process. But now, after I lost him, I find myself wanting to know those principles, because those principles have stood the test of time, and it's what's led me to serve in the military. It's what's led me to work in corporate America for big Fortune 500. It's what led me to work at startups or nonprofits, or to use my GI Bill. Thank God for the GI Bill. It's what led me because of being steadfast in those principles and my dad. And now it's a way for me to get closer to him. That's also another way for that. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Arnold, because now it makes sense as far as the success. And I want to thank you and your family for their service as well. Again, I want to make sure that if you guys are going to listen to this, please understand that Arnold has the roadmap to where you want to get to in your life. I'm not just talking about career-wise. I'm talking about personally, spiritually, economically. Arnold has the blueprint here, and it was all given to his family. So I just want to thank you for sharing that nugget here. Now, I do want to pivot a little bit to maybe some folks that have guided you along the way besides the father. Is there anyone that part of the community that is faith-based, or any business leaders that have pulled you aside and kind of gave you some good food to chew on, Arnold?
Wow, that is a good question, because there have been individuals, and I may remember them only by their first name, and some I may not even remember the name, but I remember their faces and I remember their words. And certainly, my father was an inspiration. 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, family first, church first. Yeah, I looked at that and I look back and I say, how many people nowadays in society are willing to put that type of effort first? And by the way, he was naturalized citizen. But then as I go down through, in the Marine Corps, there was a sergeant when I was a lance corporal who got shot, died. But he was someone who had been a father figure while in the Marine Corps. Then going through the business world, there were individuals who I met who were in a similar situation, even though our circle was small because there were few of us. We motivated each other because we had similar histories and we had similar passions and dreams. But one individual that I remember when I was with the city of Austin, and one of those individuals that I've forgotten his name, but I'll never forget his face and his words, who described his life. But he was an African American. We shared a lot, but life can be that one way. It'll sprinkle certain people along your path who, at those points when you feel that you can't make it, and believe me, those points do come, where it feels that it's overwhelming, it's just too much. When someone pops up, and it may be somebody who's already there, somebody who comes in, but they say something or do something that all of a sudden brings you to reality, in that, why are you giving up? Life is what you make of it. Yes, it can be unfair. You can let things overwhelm you. You can let things defeat you. But if you have that foundation, very much as you said, Jeffrey, where you've had that spiritual guidance, where you had those role models, where you had those individuals that you have been able to share with as you go along, they keep you going. And John Montemayor, when I met him and his vision of a film studio, so many people that would have looked at it as, oh, it's just a business venture. No. When I heard him and I heard his vision about what he wanted to do when he grew up, and provide that opportunity to others, I said, you know what? That fits with my vision. Let's do something that will help others lift themselves up. And it's more than just a business venture. It's more than just a film studio. It's an opportunity for others to listen and to learn through inspirational, positive narratives that they can keep going forward. Not everyone gets to meet somebody that helps them get up and continue, but sometimes film can do that. I saw a documentary by the name of American Sons, and I think you may have the director of that, Andrew Gonzalez, on it. And when I watched that documentary, American Sons, and I saw those Marine veterans who came back from Afghanistan, I said, that's exactly what I went through. I had a conversation with Danny Garcia, who you've had on the show. And you realize there's others. And that is when that interconnecting comes in. That's where that village comes in. And that you realize that, yes, you're important as an individual, but you become powerful when you take what you have as an individual and you take your faith and you combine it with all the others to be able to create that village. The short answer.
You hit on something important here, and I'll let you finish your thought here. But when you talked about American Sons, and I watched it as well, and I pray that everybody here watches it. This is a documentary. If you've ever seen Res Repo, this is another version of Res Repo here, where it focuses on a band of brothers, of fellow Marines that are from Texas who went to Afghanistan. In fact, I was there when the corporal was there as well, and I had actually finished the deployment a month after he was KIA in October. My unit was leaving in November as well, so I'm sure we might have heard of him. But it's such a powerful document because it talks about Americans. You're an American son, Danny, and I'm an American son, and we are God's sons here. We are men of God, and we are talking about people that are coming together in a way to build not only camaraderie, but to build the Father's house, to build spiritual leadership, to build leadership in business, and to help the next generation so they don't have to go through some of the struggles that we went through. Now, struggle is a good thing. I'm not saying it's not. But it's important for people to understand that there are people as well accomplished as you, Arnold, because there may be a child who doesn't have access to a phone or doesn't have access to a lot of these things in communication or media, and who one day might say, wow, we have Latino business owners, we have Latino filmmakers, we have Latino veterans, Medal of Honor recipients. How come I'm being fed this other story that is telling me the opposite? I thought they were criminals. I thought they were illegal immigrants. I thought they were. Hold on, wait, what's going on here? And it's important for us to share that. And you brought up somebody very important here who is near and dear to my heart, who's also a fellow Vietnam veteran, just like yourself, because I've been focusing on these Vietnam veterans. And if you guys don't know, his name is Danny Garcia, born in Spanish Harlem, of Cuban Cubano ancestry. And he's a fellow Marine Corps veteran who had only $48 in his pocket in Northern California, and was also on the brink of collapse. He was being in the flesh, and he didn't know what to do with his life. Also was going through divorce, going through a hard time. And one day he just said, I'm going to walk by faith. I only got $48 in my bank account, and I'm going to walk from Northern California all the way to Southern California. And he didn't stop there. He's been walking ever since for over 52 million steps, 26,000 miles. And he has walked over 8 continents to walk for children, to walk for world peace, and to deliver the message at all costs. Now, his story reminds me of The Sound of Freedom, and also the Latino version of Forrest Gump here. Now, I'm holding up his book called Marines Don't Cry. This is a bestseller here, and it needs to be turned into a movie because a lot of children, it's important for them to understand that, Arnold. I don't want to hear about a child in Northern California or a child in Texas who took their life because they were bullied by their peers in elementary. So we need to find a way to give them the spirit and to build their house like a rock. So in case that happens again, now they're equipped, right? Because we've all been through that, been bullied or been less of, but I know who I serve. I know who my Father is, and I know that he is for me. So it doesn't matter who's against me. He is equipping me. So we have to equip them as well. And I'm sure that a lot of folks that listen to that can relate to these things because we are Americans as well. We are not just a lot of folks use the term called Americano, and I didn't know what it was before. And they'd always say, well, it's people from that community. It's like, no, we're Americanos too. We're Americans. Our family's from here. Our roots are from here. We have Native American ancestry as well, not just European ancestry. So I think it's important for us to have that understanding here. And so I can't wait to talk more about Danny Garcia. And I pray that Studio Village can be the vehicle to launch their success and his story, because everybody needs to see it. It needs to be in every single community, in every single barrio, in every single veteran center, in every single VA, because you hit something earlier, Arnold, and you said you were given pills. And there was a lady who gave a testimony in Congress. She worked for the VA. She had this purse, and she was just pulling out pill after pill after pill after pill after pill. Where she was a nurse, and she said, if I wasn't a nurse, I probably would have killed myself. There has to be some type of alternative, and the spiritual is that alternative. It should be the mainstream because God is the ultimate physician. Jesus is the ultimate healer here. And I'm a firm believer of that. If you, life and death are in the power of the tongue. The way you talk, the way you think, the way you act, it all has an impact on you, right? So let's talk about a couple figures here besides Danny. But there's another one you said, and I didn't know who this person was. His name is Freddie Fender. Can you tell us about who this person is?
Oh, Freddie Fender. Of course, his real name was not Freddie Fender, and I can't remember what that was his last name. He was an individual from South Texas, a town, San Benito, who picked up a guitar, and at the age of 10 or 11, he was heard by a person who ran a radio station. And when that person heard him play the guitar and sing, he said, well, you've got a talent. That became the beginning of what was an amazing story of someone very much like what we have spoken about. The obstacles, the discrimination, the challenges, all the reasons why not. He began to leap over those. He began to follow his passion, which was, yes, he could actually make people feel better by his singing. And he went through a lot in life. He went through the Marine Corps. When he was in the Marine Corps, he experienced that bonding that many of us experience as well. So that when he left the Marine Corps and he became someone who became a renowned artist, musical talent, he went back and he conducted um, shows overseas in Korea, in Okinawa, because he wanted to be back with and be able to provide something to those that he had shared so much while he was in the Marine Corps. But his entire life is one that demonstrates that you don't give in to what is the easiest thing to do, which is to give up. You believe in yourself, you have faith, and you continue to move forward over every single obstacle. Um, Freddie Fender is one of those individuals who has not been known as well as he should outside of the country music or the Tejano world, music world. But he's one of those other stories that there's so many of that we want to be able to capture and be able to put in front of people and say, look, here's who we really are. And here's what we have gone through. And we never gave up. We never turned our backs on our responsibilities and our duties. And all we ask you for is to be recognized for what we can do, for our talents, and that we have as great an opportunity to be able to contribute to this country in so many ways as anyone else does. But Freddie Fender is one of those individuals that definitely does need to have the attention of not only all the United States, but the world as well.
Powerful words. And so you said he was a Marine Corps veteran and he was doing his own USO tour versions of cheering up the troops, uplifting the troops, spending time with him. And he's also a country music star. Now, did he make it into the Country Music Hall of Fame yet?
No, they kept him out. He got all the other accolades and awards you can possibly get, but he never got into the Country Music Hall of Fame.
And I say that because I was doing some research on him, and that was one of his last dying wishes, was he wanted to be the first Mexican American into the Country Music Hall of Fame here. I think we need to have a conversation, whoever sits on the board of the Country Music Hall of Fame, and make sure we get Freddie Fender here. And I believe the Studio Village, the first Latino veteran-owned film studio, this is why they exist, so people know who Freddie Fender is, and I have his full name here, so people know who Valdemar Garza Huerta is from San Benito, Texas. San Benito, that's a spiritual-filled name right there. Like, that is ordained. That is destiny here. So I can see why Studio Village, there's a purpose for Studio Village here, because they need to get his name out there.
Exactly. You're hitting the point so well, Jeffrey. And again, your program is so important. You're doing something that is so critical to the entire Latino as well as veteran community and to the whole world. And certainly the story of Freddie Fender, along with someone like Danny Garcia, those are the stories that need to be put out there. They're authentic stories. They're not the John Wayne type of commercialized Western. No, these are real people. We need to humanize, that is, the experiences of Latinos, of veterans, so that people relate to them as real individuals that have a very important role, a positive role in this society.
Well said. And again, I will hold his book up. Danny Garcia's book, Marines Don't Cry. It's about delivering the message at all costs. He is a fellow Marine. He is also a pastor. He is someone also who came back, and he's 80 years old, by the way, still filled with the Holy Spirit, came back from Antarctica in March, and he was in Ukraine in October, and he's about to go to Israel and Gaza, and he's going to go to India and Pakistan. And he already had India and Pakistan in his mind before the India and Pakistan conflict kicked off. You see how God is working through him? He's going there to try to deliver peace. That is such a profound thing. The fact that he served as a Marine, and we're trained to fight wars. We're war fighters, but now he wants to get out and he wants to promote the peace, because warriors, we actually don't like going to war. We want to prevent war as much as possible because we know the carnage that comes with. And I had a conversation yesterday, a couple of days ago, with someone active duty commander. He said it's a good sign of peace to be diplomatic first before we have to exhaust and send our sons and daughters to go fight if they have to. And that's why I love his story, and I pray that Studio Village again is the platform for it. There's no one else like Studio Village. There's no one else that's the first Latino veteran-owned film. I can see Studio Village, and I'm going to put up their website again, them doing films like The Long Game, because I saw it last year for the first time. I saw it in December, Arnold. I didn't know about this. And you and I on our first call, we talked about the Long Game. Another group of Texas sons, veterans, World War II, Vietnam, or World War I, excuse me. But what hit me, Arnold, is I saw it first myself, and then I was spending time with my brother and my nephews in LA, and I had them see it. And these kids are very extroverted. They always just want to go out and do athletic things. And I said, no, you know what we're going to do? We're going to watch a movie. I didn't tell them what it was. I didn't tell them anything about it. And as soon as I hit play, somebody had said something very loud, and they were just mute the entire time. And when it was finished, they said, Theo, that was a really good film. And I don't watch movies. I said, yes, because I want you to see films like that. And that is what you guys are doing, Arnold. You guys want the youth to see a film like that so they can see themselves in that. Now, there's another figure I think we need you guys, and I pray I got to find a way to get a hold of Yvette. She's been ditching me for a little bit. If I get a hold of her, I would like for you guys to have a conversation with Yvette just to tell her that there's an opportunity here. And why don't you tell us about who this guy Roy Benavides is? Because, I just saw something a couple months ago, Arnold, and it was a policy shift, and I understand the political winds are shifting, but it really broke my heart to see that Roy Benavides' photo at the Pentagon was taken down with Jackie Robinson and other figures. And I said, wow, so where's it going to go? Who's going to know about Roy Benavides? Who's going to know about the actual Lion of Vietnam? Who's going to know about that? Who's going to know about Rambo? Who's going to know that he was shot 40 times? Who's going to know that he was in a body bag? Who's going to know that he fought for veterans and their disability rights after he got out, after the VA tried to take away his disability to say he was an able-bodied person? What's to say about that? Who's gonna know about this historical, grandiose figure who was teased growing up, who was an orphan, raised by his uncle, who was not the biggest, not the strongest, not the smartest, not the fastest, but he took a knife to a gunfight for 6 hours in hell in Vietnam because he answered the call. There's a call, and there's a calling for everyone here. When God calls you, you go and do it, and that's what he did. He didn't think about, well, I didn't have a rifle on me, or I didn't have the latest gear, the armor, the equipment on me. He just got off that helicopter and he ran to save the lives of his men. And you mean to tell me we don't have a film about him? Something that Hollywood can get behind instead of showing a different individual who they call Rambo? Tell me about that, Arnold. I mean, I'm ready to get into this.
Well, you described it so well. There are others who gave their lives for their buddies, others who threw themselves on hand grenades in order to be able to allow their buddies to survive. But it is beyond me why someone such as Master Sergeant Benavides, hasn't gotten the attention. Not only hasn't gotten the attention, but he's been removed along with other heroes from the opportunity to even exist or to be known to the community. This is exactly what we want to counter, and that's the point that you made. If we don't tell the stories of those individuals so that could be known, who else is going to do it? So the importance of someone, the real Rambo, and his history, what made him so strong? Why is he someone who should be inspirational to the whole country? Why isn't that done? We can guess and speculate about why not, but the most productive thing we can do is to do it ourselves. If we don't tell those stories, yes, they will be forgotten. They will be erased from history. So that's one of the very important goals of Studio Village, is tell those stories that otherwise would not be told, otherwise would not let people know the accomplishments of so many people. Tell those stories so that they can become a part of history and they can inspire others.
I have a book of Roy Benavides that that Yvette authored. It is called Tango Mike, and it stands for, it's really, what it really means is that mean Mexican, because that's what they called him, because he was teased, but he was full of the Holy Spirit, as I'm gonna say, because he was teased. But they called it Tango Mike. That was his call sign, and I love it because it was the Holy Spirit. It was his passion. It was somebody that was driven. It was someone that didn't share what went on the battlefield with his family. He protected them. So now we must protect them. We must protect our generations. We must inspire our generations so we can also protect them and feed them the truth and feed them this good food and tell them that there is hope, there is inspiration, there is a way here. And Studio Village is going to be that platform. There's another individual that you guys need to know about. His name is Sergeant Peralta. And he is someone who served in the Marine Corps, Iraq War veteran, who jumped on a grenade to save the lives of his fellow Marines. And they put him, and he was also an immigrant from Mexico. But they put him up for the Medal of Honor twice, Arnold, I believe. And he's been denied because they say they didn't have enough evidence to say that. And it infuriates me. But I know that with like a Studio Village, or we're doing here at TVC, we are going to get him that Medal of Honor, but also recognition in a film, documentary, whatever the case may be, so people know who Sergeant Peralta is. Because the youth need to see just how capable their own community is. And so we can change their language, so we can change their mindset, so we can change the way they think. Instead of just being fed this fake narrative about people in our community being drug dealers or working as landscapers or as maids. Like we're more than that. We are more than that. And we are a very powerful community who just wants to belong. In fact, there was another Marine from the Central Valley, Iraq veteran, came back, was dealing with his TBI and PTSD, commits a nonviolent offense, and goes is homeless, loses his daughter to drugs and is drugged infused, and he turns his life around, and he says, I did that because God told me to. And so he gave himself to God. Now he's a pastor in Texas. It's called the Covenant Church. He's a pastor there. And he was detained last year, coming back from the first time from Mexico. His name is Julio Torres, Pastor Julio Torres, fellow Marine. I was just on the phone with him a couple of days ago. But he was detained last year when he was coming back right before the 4th of July. And his story is so powerful because he says when he was detained by ICE, he was detained for 6 days and let go on the 7th day, just in time for the 4th of July. And so he is just a very powerful figure here. And I was on the phone with him because he's been put on humanitarian parole. And they've given him until June. And so right now I'm working on attempting to get a few political figures that are in your state to get a hold of him, because you're talking about a warrior. You're talking about a pastor. You're talking about somebody who has a rehab home to have people on fentanyl, the fentanyl crisis that's killing tons of people, of Americans. And he has veterans there and he is giving them housing. And so now we want to just use him and send him back to another country who, by the way, might use him for some type of kinetic conflict or use his skills that we have given him. Why would we want to do that here? So that's another powerful story that a studio village can also do. Someone who has turned his life around, just like a Job or just like Paul, right? Who they were called because they were walking in the flesh. And then one day the Holy Spirit came on them and said, we need you to be a warrior for Christ. And he's a warrior for Christ. You know how many lives he's saved, not just on the battlefield, but also in the drug field? How many people's lives? I'm having conversations with him because God may need him again for this recent executive order that just came out about standing up a homeless center for veterans in West LA, VA. There's thousands of veterans in West LA that are living on the streets. And an executive order came out about a week ago, it was a Friday ago, that said we will establish housing there to house up to 6,000 veterans by January 1st, 2028. Julio created the model, Arnold. So why would we want to send someone there back to another country when he can come here and help bring more housing for veterans? Because he said Texas set the example. Like I said, Texas is growing on me every day, and I can't wait to see you guys in the flesh. But I can see you guys doing a film or some work with Pastor Julio Torres, who I will gracefully make an introduction to you and your team so you can learn more about him. But his story made national headlines last year, and so we need to find a way to get him more recognition. Any thoughts or anything from your end? I know right now we are just in fellowship, and I'm just very grateful for that.
Well, thanking you so much for what you're doing, Jeffrey. You're beginning to ignite and motivate so many people to act. You're one of those individuals that I've come across that now really is inspiring to let's do this. So thank you very much for the show, and continue your message. You're definitely being filled with the Spirit of the Lord.
Thank you, and I cannot wait for us to meet in person. And again, real quick, how can we help? How can a veteran or a supporter help Studio Village? How can we get it to the finish line so it can start producing actual films? Is there someone that I can pass to your contact information or John's contact information? Because like you said, it takes a whole village, right? God said, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So I know God is going to send you guys the labor, because the harvest is plenty here, because it takes a village to really make something like this happen. And I am going to pray and support and connect your team with whoever they need to, because we want to change that narrative with you as well, Arnold.
Thank you. And of course, investors are always good, but anyone who supports our efforts, we'd love to hear that encouragement.
Okay. So you guys heard it here. They are looking for investors. Now, you guys don't have like a crowdfunding or equity crowdfunding campaign yet, do you?
No.
Okay, maybe we can talk offline about that, because I think that's very important, because I noticed that Angel Studios did something for The Sound of Freedom where they launched a equity crowdfunding campaign here. So this is the Angel Studios, but the Latino veteran-owned version, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine getting behind something like that, and your children are going to thank you, not today, but 50 years from now, because I'm thanking my father, because my father inspired me, and he left me this good fruit and these good foundations, so I can now take it and I can protect my family, I can protect my community, I can protect my country here, right? Studio Village is going to be that place where you got faith, you got patriotism, you got leadership, you got veterans, and you got people that have a foundation like a rock that will withstand the test of time here. So if you're an investor, if you're someone that wants to partner, if you're someone that just is curious, if you have a book, maybe a script ready, maybe someone you think they should talk to, I will pass you the information to Mr. Arnold Rodriguez here, who again is the business partner and chief operating officer. By the way, COOs, they have a very challenging roles and responsibilities here. They are the ones that make it happen, day-to-day operations. Arnold is that guy, and I can tell, very business savvy. Arnold, any final thoughts or comments?
Thank you again. God bless everyone. Let's get this thing done.
Wow, you heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. And real quick, just a quick break. If you guys want to be a part of something like this, if you guys like what we're doing here at TVC, if you like the type of content that we're producing, focused on leadership, veterans, business, personal development, and giving you a voice here, you can scan the QR code here so you can support our work, because we can't do it without your support here. And so I encourage you all to scan the QR code and support TVC so you can support these efforts that we're doing here. So Arnold, I want to thank you again for coming on TVC. I know this is going to be one of many, because I'm looking to hear more updates, because I'm going to hold you guys accountable to make sure this gets done, and I will figure out a way to get myself over there so we can talk to whoever we need to talk to. So Studio Village becomes, and I love how John said it, a place so you don't have to go outside of the state or outside of your village. It can stay within the community, and we can build and make an impact. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. TVC signing out. We will see you next week.